I am the mother of 2 wonderful children. I work as a nurse at the city's municipal hospital. My husband Michael is a civil engineer and works for the public department. Our life was ordinary. It was full of boys' football games on Saturdays, church services at Sundays, discussions about where to spend the holidays and the constant concern with the month's bills. We weren't rich but we had enough. We had a united family. I never imagined this something extraordinary could happen with me. I was just a nurse, a mother, living a simple life and quiet in a city that most people don't even know it exists. The rain had started on Monday and not stopped. It wasn't just rain, it was a curtain of water that descended from the sky without mercy. The news called it the worst flood of the last 100 years. For us it was the end of our world. The stream that passed behind our neighborhood where I and the children used to fish in the summer afternoons, had transformed in a raging and destructive river. In that Thursday morning the order of evacuation arrived by radio. We were trying to get our stuff that was more important, family photos, documents, the teddy bear which Lucas couldn't sleep without. The water was on our ankles, then knees. It was cold, and it had a smell stranger of wet earth and fear. Michael was trying to start the car, but the water rose very quickly. "Sarah, we have to leave right now," he shouted. Emma was carrying Lucas in her arms. The 2 were crying with little faces buried in my shoulder. I was trying to catch our beautiful dog, putting her in a transport box, but the water suddenly advanced. A wave dark and powerful broke the window of our room, shattering the glass everywhere. The force of the water knocked me down. I remember the shock of the cold, the violence of that impact. It was like being run over by a truck. I was dragged into low. Everything turned into a whirlpool of water, brown branches, pieces of furniture and despair. I couldn't tell the difference where it was, up or down. My lungs burned. I fought, I kicked, but the current was too strong. It was as if a giant invisible hand was holding me deep down. All I could think about was my children. I saw Emma's little face in my mind, the brown eyes, full of tears. I saw Lucas asking for Mum. "God, please just let them stay good, just save my babies." That was my last prayer before everything darkened. Then everything went silent. The deafening noise of the water disappeared. The burning in my lungs disappeared. The panic, the fear, everything just stopped. I felt a tug soft like a feather being lifted by a delicate breeze. I opened my eyes although I didn't know there were any closed. I was no longer in the water but somewhere else. I was floating weightless above my own house. You could see everything from above. The roof appeared surrounded by a sea of mud and wreckage. I saw my husband Michael clinging to the roof of the submerged car holding Emma and Lucas with all his strength. He was screaming my name. His voice was hoarse, filled with a pain that cut through the silence like a blade. The children cried desperately in one sound that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces, but I couldn't feel this pain. I felt a strange peace, deep, impossible to explain. It made no sense. My family was suffering down there and I was here in above, feeling only absolute calm. I tried to shout back, to say that I was fine but had no voice. I was just pure consciousness floating in the air. I looked around. Everything was covered in fog, soft gray. It wasn't scary, it was just quiet, serene. I saw other lights, bright shapes rising from the water by the whole city. They were human souls. I knew immediately that I was one of them. We were the people who could not escape the flood. A thought came to me as clear as crystal. So that's it. This is death. There was no fear in that thought, just a simple and calm acceptance. Then the gray mist began to part, not as a cloud parting but as a curtain being slowly pulled back. And in the distance there was a light. It wasn't like the sun or a lamp, for it was alive. The light was made of something more than just clarity. It was made of love. I know that this is weird, but it's the only way that I can describe. The light was pure love, unconditional, earth-shattering, and it was coming towards me. Or maybe I was being drawn to it. I just knew I wanted to be there. I wished to be in that light more than I had ever wanted anything in my entire life. As it approached, the light began to take shape. It was the silhouette of a man. He was tall, but not intimidating. He wore a simple tunic, the color of ivory, and it seemed to shine with the same light as the surrounded. Her hair was dark, reached the shoulders, and his skin was brunette, like someone who had passed their life working under the sun. I will never forget his eyes. They weren't just a color, they were all color. When he looked at me, I felt my whole life passes before me, not as a movie, but as a feeling. Every joy, every mistake, every secret shame, every act of silent kindness. He saw everything and did not judge me. There was no condemnation. There was just understanding and such love deep, so powerful that I felt like I were being recreated and healed in every broken part of my soul. Tears filled my eyes, even though I had no physical eyes to cry. The feeling of being completely seen and completely loved was overwhelming. I knew who he was. I didn't need to ask. The word formed in my spirit in a gasp of sheer astonishment. Jesus. His voice was not a sound that traveled through the air. It was a feeling that blossomed within my chest, a heat that spread throughout my being. It was kinder than any voice I had already heard. Sarah Marie, he said, and my name in his voice sounded like the most beautiful song. Welcome, peace be with you. I couldn't speak, just floated there bathed in its presence. All my worries, life, hospital bills, the problems at work, the silly argument that Michael and I had this week. Everything seemed so small and so insignificant. All that mattered was this love, this perfect love that consumed completely. He smiled and light around him became even more bright. It wasn't a blinding light, for it was a comforting light that felt like home. I'm dead, aren't I? I finally managed to form the thought. Your life on earth is over, he said, kindly, but you are more alive now than you were. He reached out. I had no hand to hold, but I reached him with my spirit. And when I did that, the mist, the gray around us dissolved completely. We were somewhere else. It wasn't heaven, not heaven with streets of gold and pearly gates we heard about. It was a place of clarity, a place where the truth was so real and solid as the ground beneath my feet. Where are we? I asked. A place of understanding, he replied. I have something to show you, something you should take back. Take it back? I was left confused. But I'm dead. I saw my family as they think I'm gone. The thought of their pain was appointed distant, muffled by the peace of his presence. Your journey is not over, he said, his eyes full of compassion. But first you need to see, you need to understand what is happening to the world where you are from. So many of my children are lost, they are distracted, they are afraid, they have forgotten how to listen. The Lord turned and the space before us changed. It was like looking through a giant window. I saw the earth, not a map, but the real planet pulsating with life. I saw continents, oceans, cities all vibrating with energy, but there was a darkness I had never noticed before. It wasn't a physical darkness, it was spiritual. It was like thick smoke and ugly, stuck to people, to buildings. In the land itself I saw the darkness spinning around schools, government buildings and even some churches, not just in America but everywhere. London, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Lagos, Sydney. The darkness covered the whole world like a sticky web. What is that? I whispered. It's fear, Jesus said, his sad voice. It's pride. The enemy worked hard to build these walls between my children. He doesn't know borders. He doesn't know nationalities. He simply sows chaos wherever he can. Then the Lord showed me a view of an atypical family in France. They were in the living room, but were not together. The father was in the phone scrolling with face empty. The mother watched a television channel news that shouted angry words. The teenage son was in the room lost in a violent game. The daughter was watching a program on the tablet that taught things that went against everything that was good and pure. They were all in the same house but they were miles apart, each one locked in their own digital cage. The dark smoke was thick around them, feeding on distraction, anger, isolation. Then the Lord showed me a family in South Korea, same thing, then one in Brazil, then one in Nigeria, always the same story. They are hungry for connection, Jesus said, are hungry for love, but they are feeding on poison. They fight over colors, by flags, by parties while their souls are turning to ash. He paused and his look was intense. That's why the storms are coming, Sarah, not just water storms but firestorms, storms of tremors, storms of difficulties. I don't send these things to punish, I allow them to break the distractions. I allow the shaking so that what is not mine can be shaken. Remain. The scene changed. I saw a vision of a great fire, It wasn't a forest fire, it was a fire sweeping through a city in China, but wasn't burning down buildings, it was burning things. I saw expensive cars melting them, I saw piles of designer clothes turning to ash, I saw bank vaults with the doors wide open, the money there inside turning into worthless dust. The people ran not from fire but from emptiness, they had lost everything they had based their lives on, and were left with nothing. They built their houses on the sand, Jesus said softly. They worship idols of wealth, fame, power. I need allow these idols to fall so that they remember the only rock that remains forever. This will happen everywhere, in New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai. All humanity needs to remember what really matters. So he showed another vision. It was a city in Canada, where the power went out, not for a few hours but for weeks. The lights went out, the phones died, the internet disappeared, the silence was deafening. In the first days there was chaos and fear, people looting and fighting for the last pieces of food. The dark smoke was thick and suffocating, but then something has changed. I saw a neighbor who never had spoken to the family from the door to the side knocking on their door with a can of beans and a flashlight. I saw one group of strangers snuggling up to around a small fire, sharing stories, singing songs. I saw people looking at the stars for the first time in years, their faces filled with admiration. I saw them praying not in big fancy churches but in their living rooms, in the streets. Their prayers were simple, desperate and real, and as they prayed, I saw little points of light begin to pierce the dark smoke. With every sincere prayer the light grew stronger, pushing the darkness behind. Do you see? Jesus asked, his voice full of hope. The enemy's most powerful weapon is the noise, the distraction. He wants my children are too busy, too entertained, too angry to hear my call, but in the silence that is coming they will have no choice but to listen. In difficulty they will not have choice but to depend on each other, others and myself. This is not going to happen only in one country, it will happen in the whole world. It's a global awakening. He looked straight into my soul. That is what is coming to the whole world, Sarah, a big removal, a big humiliation. For many it will seem like the end of the world, but it is not the end, but the beginning of a great awakening. I am not yet judging the nations, I am rescuing them. Jesus then showed me a sight that took my breath away. It was as if I were seeing the planet Earth from a perspective that no human has ever had. I saw huge waves of spiritual energy moving through the continents. It wasn't something that the physical eyes could see, but in the spiritual kingdom was more real than any material thing. The waves of change already they started, he said, his voice echoing with divine authority. See what happening in Europe. He focused the vision in a city that looked like Rome. I saw people coming out of tall buildings, not by cause of an earthquake but because something inside them was calling them to the streets. They didn't know why but felt an urgent need to connect with each other. I saw a man, Italian businessman dressed in an expensive suit, stopping in the middle of the street and offering his jacket to a beggar that was cold. I saw a French woman letting her expensive coffee cool down while helping a mother carry her baby stroller down the subway stairs. Small acts of kindness that seem to be sprouting out of nowhere. The Holy Spirit one is moving, Jesus explained. Even when people don't know what is happening they feel the call. True love is being awakened in their hearts, preparing the way for what is to come. Then the vision changed to Africa. I saw a terrible drought reaching several nations. The fields were dry. The crops were lost, but instead of despair I saw something extraordinary happening. I saw entire communities coming together in one way they had never done before. I saw people sharing their latest corn kernels. I saw wells being dug by willing hands. In scarcity, they discover the abundance of love, Jesus said, his eyes shining. When the material things fail, the human heart finally remembers what truly sustains life. This will happen on all continents. The humanity will rediscover that it is one family. The scene moved to Asia. I saw a big city, maybe Bangkok or Manila, being hit by a massive storm, but it wasn't just wind and rain. It was as if the spiritual atmosphere of the city was being purified. I saw people who never they had spoken before helping each other mutually. I saw temples of different religions opening their doors to anyone who needed shelter. to the religious divisions that the enemy created are being broken. Jesus continued, when the need is real, love surpasses the doctrine. When the pain is genuine, compassion trumps tradition. My children will find out that they were always one people, just separated by imaginary walls. Then he showed me something that made me cry. It was a vision of South America. I saw a family in Brazil, poor, living in a slum. They had very little, but I saw a golden light around them. The mother was praying, his hands calloused, folded over a worn Bible. His words were simple, but I saw his prayers rising like pillars of fire, crossing dimensions. See how the prayers of the humble have power. Jesus said, the proud build towers, but the humble build bridges to heaven. In the great turmoil that is coming, the last will be first and the first shall be last. Those ones who depend on the riches of the world will discover that their fortunes are like sand, but those who are rich in faith, they will discover that their treasures are eternal. The view changed again. This time it was Australia. Huge fires were burning, but they weren't natural fires. It was as if the nation's own pride was being consumed. I saw proud politicians being forced to admit that they did not have all the answers. I saw rich people discovering that their money could not buy security. I saw young people who had rejected God, turning to Him in despair. The fire that is coming is not to destroy, Jesus explained, it is for purifying. It is to burn everything that is not eternal, so that only what is real remain. Some people will resist, some will harden even more, but many will surrender, and when they do surrender, they will find out that I was waiting for them all the time. Then, he showed me a vision that filled me both fear and hope. I saw waves literal rising from the oceans, not just tsunamis of water, but waves of spiritual change. I saw these waves hitting everyone continents back simultaneously. It was as if the planet itself was being baptized. The waters of judgment and mercy are the same, Jesus said. What seems like destruction to some is release for others. What seems like the end for some, it is a beginning for others. I am washing the earth, Sarah. I'm preparing her to a new era. I saw entire cities being evacuated, not because of natural disasters, but because the people were being supernaturally moved to seek places of prayer and contemplation. I saw millions of people leaving their complex urban lives, going to simple, rural places, where they could hear the voice of God more clearly. The great exodus is beginning. He continued, it's not a physical exodus only, but a spiritual one. My children are leaving Babylon of the world system and entering in the secret place of my presence.